So how much do we actually know about Sally Jackson's childhood and her relationship with Poseidon? Probably the single biggest reason why Percy Jackson is who he is goes back to Sally and how she raised him to be a kind, loving, and loyal friend to those he cares about, and without her, there's no way that we would have the version of Percy that we all know and love. But what does that say about her? Well, today we wanted to talk about Sally and what probably makes her the single most important character in the franchise. Sally Estelle Jackson was born to Jim and Estelle, and though we don't know exactly where she was born, we know that she grew up around Gramercy Park. As a child, she began to show early signs of being able to see through the mist, and she could understand aspects of the mythological world much better than anyone else around her, including her parents. She mentions one particular instance where she saw Pegasus, whereas her parents and everyone around her just saw a police-mounted horse, and her parents confused her ability to see through the mist with poor eyesight, so they gave her glasses to hopefully correct her vision. We know that at this point she was 5 years old or younger, for a reason we'll get into in a minute, but the first time she met a goddess was during a bike ride through Gramercy Park, where she came across Hecate's mansion. Hecate became the first god to confirm Sally's gift of being able to see through the mist, and she told Sally that there was nothing wrong with her vision, so she took Sally's glasses and sent her on her way. But by this point, Hecate's magic school had been closed down for decades, but since we know that Hecate was open to training mortals and demigods alike, it seems likely that Sally could have become a candidate. Hecate shows enough interest in Sally and her ability to see through the mist, though since the school is closed down, we'll never know for sure. We do know, however, that this ability does seem like it fades over time, since in the Battle of the Labyrinth, Percy pitches his idea to Sally and asks her about her ability to see through the mist, and she says that she can't see as well as she used to, but there is some evidence to suggest that it can be learned with time. When Paul first gets involved with Percy's life, we don't get the sense that he can see through the mist since the Battle of Manhattan. He outright says that he hopes he just killed a monster, indicating that he can't fully see what's going on. Now that he's aware of it, however, he seems to be much more involved, though whether or not his sight is getting better or not isn't perfectly clear. We know that charm speak and mist manipulation can be taught and learned, and that an awareness of the mist helps diminish those effects. So is it possible that by knowing about the mist and knowing what to look for, Paul can start to see through the illusion? But again, that's not confirmed. A minute ago, we mentioned that all of this had to be while Sally was 5 or younger, and that's because when she was 5, Jim and Estelle tragically died in a plane crash 150 miles south of Lake Ontario, and the cause of the crash was never officially confirmed. At first glance, it seems like Zeus could have theoretically been responsible for the plane going down, but we don't know exactly why he would do such a thing. Sally hadn't met Poseidon yet, and she was just a kid, and we don't know enough about Jim or Estelle to figure out why they would be on Zeus's bad side. All we know is that they can't see through the mist, so they seem reasonably disconnected from the mythological world. Until we have more information, it's theoretically possible that this was Zeus's fault. We just don't see a good motive right now. But then again, we know basically nothing about who was on the plane. Either way, however, we know that Sally was remanded to the care of her Uncle Rich. He provided as well as he could for Sally, but during her senior year of high school, he was diagnosed with cancer and slowly lost his ability to care for himself as he deteriorated, prompting Sally to drop out of high school in order to look after him in his final days. She became his unofficial home care assistant, but since she never graduated high school, she became severely limited in the kinds of jobs she could get. All of her work was low-paying, oftentimes menial work that didn't have any sort of long-term career prospects. She sank everything she made into Rich's care, and when he died, she was left alone with basically nothing. Sally bounced around between these gigs for a time until one day in her early 20s, she was on a beach in Montauk, and she saw a trident through the mist, and this is where she met Poseidon for the first time. The two of them spent the summer together, and Sally made such an impression on Poseidon that he broke his oath not to sire any more children, and in the Chalice of the Gods, Sally remarks that Percy took a long time to be born. This is most likely a reference to the fact that Percy's birthday is August 18th, but her relationship with Poseidon was a summer fling, so she's probably referring to the fact that the math doesn't quite add up. Poseidon, however, tried to be attentive, and he offered to build her a palace at the bottom of the sea where she and Percy would be safe from Zeus's wrath, should he ever find out that a child of the Big Three had been born. We know that by this point, Talia was around 5 years old, so Zeus had also broken his oath, but that would not keep him from smiting Percy the moment he learned that Poseidon had fallen out of line as well. In fact, bringing up that Zeus was no better probably would have only made him angrier and more likely to do something rash, so Poseidon was forced to abandon Sally in order to keep her hidden. The more time that he spent with her, the more suspicious Zeus would become, so he left Sally and Percy alone in order to keep them safe. Before he left, however, he told Sally about Camp Half-Blood and encouraged her to teach Percy as much as she could about this half of his life before the monsters learned of his existence, and when they did, she was to send him to camp for training. He returned to the ocean, but Sally never told Percy that his father was dead, only that he was lost at sea, and to protect him, she continued her string of low-paying, menial jobs, and when Percy was a toddler, she married Gabe Ugliano. She did this because she knew his scent would help to cover Percy's own, and she put up with the years of verbal and physical abuse at the hands of Gabe in order to keep her son safe. It was the same selfless nature that carved Percy into who he is, but he also learned defiance at the same time. We know that Sally and Gabe had one particularly bad fight about whether or not food could be blue, and just to subtly spite Gabe, she went out of her way to make Percy blue food or bring him blue candy from her time at the candy shop Sweet on America, as a way to show him that Gabe didn't call the shots. As Percy grew up, he began having difficulties in school with dyslexia and ADHD, and when Percy was in 4th grade, we know that he inadvertently dunked his class into a shark tank during a field trip to SeaWorld, which resulted in him getting expelled. When he was in 5th grade, he had an incident on a separate field trip to a Civil War museum, which accidentally sent a cannonball into the side of the school bus and got him expelled yet again. Because of these and previous expulsions, Sally kept bouncing Percy between boarding schools where she could keep him at a safe distance since she knew it was only a matter of time before his father's side of the family caught up with him. When he was in 6th grade, he joined Yancey Academy where he met Grover, the protector who is, by about this point, halfway through his journey of collecting children of the Big Three like Pokemon cards. But Sally understood that the time to send him to camp was getting closer. This is where we get into the events of the Lightning Thief, so if you'd like to see another video talking about the rest of Sally Jackson's life from this point forward, be sure to let us know and we'd be happy to do one. But this seems like an appropriate stopping point. But that's the life of Sally Jackson with all of the details we know so far leading up to the events of the series. But be sure to let us know if we missed anything. As always, we love this series, we love talking about this series, and we'd love to have you join in the conversation down below. As always, stay safe, demigods, take care of your mother, and we'll see you in the next one.